Good morning, Makota. This is our second chapter today from our chapter book that we've been reading. I'm going to get started for you guys now. Friday afternoon, I went straight to my room when I got home and lay on the bed. It was so lumpy that my back had hurt all morning after tossing and turning in it all night. It's weird to call it my room and my bed when just yesterday I was living somewhere else. My mom knocked on my door. Is it safe to come in here? This was my great-grandma's house, and it had been built in 1930. The floors creaked and the walls smelled like smoke. I wasn't sure my room in this house was safe. It's open, I told her. She sat on the edge of the bed. It's hard leaving everything behind, but I have to do what's best for us. She glanced around the room. Right now, this is it. I sat up and stared at the dirty white wall in front of me. I know. She had lost her job, and we had nowhere else to go. Great-grandma had left this place to my mom in her will. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mom. She was a warrior, and she'd never give up. She leaned against my shoulder. Now you're talking to me? We both laughed. How was your first day of school, mister? All I could think about was Shane's order to write his paper. It made me feel sick. How could I write 3 paragraphs for him anyways? He had only told me that he and the other guy liked to hunt and fish. I definitely did not want to write it. On the other hand, I definitely did not want to get beat up. It was okay, I told my mom. I get to do some writing, like I did for the other school. I thought about telling her the truth, but she already had too many things to worry about. She hugged my shoulders. That's great, Jonah. You're a wonderful writer. She was the only one allowed to call me Jonah. We both jumped when a knock at the front door echoed through the walls. My mom stood up and asked me, who could that be? Maybe it's the pizza delivery man, I said with high hopes. She shook her head and walked out of the room. I followed her to make sure everything was okay. My mom had spent a lot of summers in this town many years ago, but she didn't know anyone there now except for my uncle. She opened the door. Hello, said a big, chubby man in a striped suit. He smiled wide and waved a smelly cigar. Miss Johnson? Yes, she replied. Can I help you? Sorry to disturb you on such a beautiful day, he bowed slightly to reveal an almost bald head. My name is Mitch Connors, and I'm from the IRS. He cleared his throat. My condolences for the loss of your grandmother. He sounded sincere. Thank you, she said. She pulled me forward. This is my son, Jonah. Mr. Connors extended his hand to me. As I shook it, I said, please call me Joe. He nodded. The man returned his attention to my mom. Miss Johnson, we need to discuss your late grandmother's property taxes. She never paid them. I had no idea what he was talking about, but my mom didn't have any money. Mr. Connors seemed like a nice man, but I didn't want him to be there anymore. Jonah, my mom said, go back and make sure the chicken coop is locked before it gets dark. I wish I could have said I didn't know what she was talking about, but I had spent enough time there to know my great-grandma kept a bunch of chickens out back. I didn't want to leave my mom stranded there with the man. I was scared he was going to give her more bad news. She looked at me and winked. Go on now, she said. Everything's going to be okay. I wanted to believe her, but I knew it wasn't true. It was nice to meet you, young man, Mr. Connors said as I walked away. I didn't respond to him. I shook my head and marched straight to the back of the house. I could hear him talking before I slammed the door. The house will belong to us on Tuesday unless you pay the $14,112 that's due. I already knew we'd be living somewhere else next week. That was a good thing because I wasn't a big fan of the mosquitoes out there, and now I didn't have to worry about Shane or the paper, about my best friend, which was another good thing. I didn't have a best friend. I stood in front of a wooden shack outside the back door. It had a half moon carved into it. This wasn't the chicken coop, no sir. This was the outhouse. My mom used to tell me how houses didn't have indoor plumbing in the old days. The toilets were outside the outhouses. The house was updated years ago, and there was a toilet inside now, but this magnificent building was still there. I passed the outhouse and headed for the chicken coop. A large area of land around it was fenced in so the chickens could come out and eat and get some exercise. The chicken coop reminded me of the treehouse I had in the city, except it was on the ground. It was made out of wood and had a door so a person could walk into it. The chickens laid their eggs in there. They were already in the coop. There was only 12 chickens left. Great-grandma used to have a lot more, but she always said one disappeared every now and then, like a magic trick. Right there in the back was old Nellie. She was my great-grandmother's favorite chicken. As my great-grandma got older, she swore old Nellie talked to her and laid golden eggs. Now, let's get one thing straight. Old Nellie didn't lay golden eggs. None of the chickens' eggs could be sold, and they were not safe for human consumption. Old Nellie only laid rotten eggs. I froze when I stepped out of the coop, half in fear and half in amazement. An animal I had never seen before stared at me. It looked a lot like a dog, but it was something else. It wasn't very big, the size of a Scottish terrier like our neighbor in Orlando had. It was a bright brown color, almost orange. The end of its tail was white, just like its chest. All 4 paws were black. There were 2 things about this animal I would never forget. It had the bluest eyes I had ever seen, like the ocean. And it was smiling at me. I bent down slowly and picked up a stick. I wasn't afraid of the animal. I had always wanted my own dog, and this was my chance. I tossed the stick to the side and shouted, "Fetch!" The animal jumped like it was going to run away. Then it looked over at the stick and back at me. I don't want to sound like a crazy person, but I'm telling you, this creature shook his head no at me. "What are you?" I whispered. "You're not a dog. If you were, then you'd have a collar." I took a step toward the animal with my hands out to show I wasn't a threat. Something told me this creature could be my friend. "This is nuts. You've got to be some kind of dog. Where's your collar?" I stopped a few feet in front of the animal that I hoped was a dog. It stared at me with its blue eyes and looked around like it wanted to make sure no one else was watching. It stood up slowly on its 2 hind legs, just like a human. What it did next took my breath away. "I don't know," the animal said like a child. "Where's your collar?" I fell flat on my butt and scooted backwards with my hands. My great-grandma had said old Nellie talked to her. Now that dog-like animal was talking to me. Maybe that land made people crazy. "Jonah!" my mom screamed from the back door. "Where are you? You better not be in that outhouse." I couldn't move anymore when the animal walked up to me like a human. "I'm a fox," he said. "Don't tell anyone you saw me here." It winked at me and raced towards the fence. I stood up and watched in disbelief as it jumped over the fence and ran out of the yard. Later that afternoon, "You locked the chicken coop, right?" my mom asked when I walked into the house. I couldn't remember, but that didn't matter at the moment, so I nodded. "We're going to stay with Uncle Mike for a while," she said. I could barely understand what she was saying. All I could think about was the talking fox. It was the most amazing thing I had ever seen, but I couldn't tell anyone about him, not even my mom. We have to be out of here by Tuesday morning, she continued. So we'll make the best of it for the weekend. I sat at the dining room table and tried to process what she said. Uncle Mike grew up in this town and never left. I'd still have to go to the same school and face Shane, but more importantly, we had to stay here in case the fox came back. We can't leave, I begged. Okay, and with that, kiddos, I'm going to stop and I will read more for you later. I'll post another one tomorrow. Hope you guys are enjoying the story. I miss all of you very much. Talk with you guys later. Till next time. Bye, kiddos.